My life has felt more like a gradient of seasons rather than specific inflection points shaping my trajectory. Though, to be fair, any given moment is one trajectory amongst infinite possibilities. Childhood was relatively safe for me. My generous mother supported my meandering endeavors, while my father often occupied himself, something I knowingly learned and held on to for many years, building myself an internal fortress to secure a sense of safety. But my fortress has always had open windows. Skateboarding was one of my earliest passions in life that has stuck with me ever since. It has been a form of expression and embodiment that has shaped the way I see and move through this world, and it granted me a sense of identity and belonging, something middle schoolers and adults alike long for despite how jaded we may have become. Fast forward to college. I grew up in a Christian home that was religious but not intimate, so as a young soul setting off on his own, I began to walk the long road of doubt with all of its winding turns. The year after I graduated, I was interning with a college Christian organization, and during an event over the new year into 2011, a significant crack formed in my religious identity that kept spreading throughout the year. It was simply a desire for something more, something outside the boundaries I had inherited that I was told were absolute. More and more questions began to flow through this crack, and one morning, in September of that same year, I knew it was time to walk away. Like removing a label I had worn for years, I felt free to finally say, I don't know, and leave behind the righteous duty to defend what I didn't think was ours to define, even though my dualistic mind still screamed for answers. Some notable phrases from my attempt here to map it all out include, something exists greater than ourselves, and how does the heart change? Is it possible that love wins? Some of us call this phase deconstruction, and the whole process felt somewhat like tracing my own shadow. After moving back to my hometown and living alone for a couple years, my soul spoke up again. Something in me knew it was time to immerse myself into relationship. Some newfound friends had taken me in, and I was invited to live with a group of guys that would become dear friends. One of these guys is Daniel, and in many ways he was the first person I really began exploring existence with. Together we often made pizza and talked about the universe. My introductions to the Enneagram, family dynamics, psychotherapy, and psychedelics were born out of these eclectic conversations and would continue to evolve as our friendship deepened. Another relationship foundational to my expansion of thought around this time is the one I had with cannabis. This medicine, though I wouldn't have called it that at the time, shifted my perspective on many things. It showed me how to be even more present. It redefined the notion of God is love into love is God, and it taught my mind to fly. The year I turned 30, I decided to uproot my life. The 6 weeks of solitude I spent on the road with no real place to call home will forever be some of my most cherished time with myself. The funny thing about leaving behind what you know to be familiar is that you get to choose whether the experience is uncomfortable or beautiful. Seattle is now the place I call home. There's something about the trees here that gives my soul deep rest. Something about the unexpected views of landscape that keep my love of this land churning. This is the land where I began my deepest shadow work, as well as where I found myself in the only true relationship I've ever been in. Her name is Ariel. I knew being in a relationship would allow for a certain type of growth, and indeed it has and continues to be. There were many things from each of our pasts that we had to slog through together, but doing so has taught me not only how to love, but how to let myself be loved. This has been the ongoing work of dismantling my fortress of safety, and I will forever be grateful for the love, joy, and expression she emanates. She is also a great person to explore realities with, whether geographically or cosmically. Together, we began to explore the realms of psychedelics and all the ways that they have continued to expand our hearts and minds. I have an ever-deepening reverence for these medicines and the teachings they bring, slowly telling us a capital S story, much like fern branches unfurling in their own time. Combined with the power of practice available to me in my intimate relationship and daily life, I find myself resisting less and less to the cosmic soup we are soaking in, and in its place I seek more and more ways to create space for this ethereal love to do its work. The last relationship I want to mention is with my father. An ever-present figure in almost all of my journeys, there has been much healing I've brought to myself and to him in these altered states. I have learned many dear things from him around discipline and ethics, but I've always felt isolated from his essence and his love, something he perhaps feels isolated from himself. I've wondered about his fortress and the child that resides there. I've wondered about the generations that precede us both. Where does our family heirloom of isolation begin? Ultimately, though, my resolve comes in deciding when the isolation will end. When I see the mosaic of experience that comprises my life as my own to accept, nourish, and dance with, the fortress I've spent so much time in begins to seem far too small.